This one I want to spend some time talking about very extensively. This is from the New York Times. The coming super brain. It's summertime and the Terminator is back, a sci-fi movie thrill ride. Terminator Salvation comes complete with a malevolent artificial intelligence dubbed Skynet. Military research and development project that gained self-awareness and concluded that humans were an irritant, perhaps a bit like athlete's foot, to be dispatched forthwith. The notion that a self-aware computing system would emerge spontaneously from the interconnections of billions of computers and computer networks goes as far back in science fiction as at least as Arthur C. Clarke's Dial F for Frankenstein, a persistent short story that appeared in 1961, if we're told an ever more interconnected telephone network that spontaneously acts like a newborn baby and leads to global chaos as it takes over financial, transportation, and military systems. Today, artificial intelligence, once the preserve of science fiction writers and eccentric computer prodigies, is back in fashion and getting serious attention from NASA and from Silicon Valley companies like Google, as well as a new round of startups that are designing everything from next-generation search engines to machines that listen or that are capable of walking around in the world. AI's new respectability is turning the spotlight back on the question of where the technology might be heading, and more ominously, perhaps, whether computer intelligence will surpass our own and how quickly. The concept of ultra-smart computers, machines with greater than human intelligence, was dubbed the singularity in a 1993 paper by the computer scientist and science fiction writer Werner Vinge. He argued that the acceleration of technological progress had led to the edge of the change comparable to the rise of human life on Earth. This thesis has long struck a chord here in Silicon Valley. Artificial intelligence is already used to automate and replace some human functions with computer-driven machines. These machines can see and hear, respond to questions, learn, draw inferences, and solve problems. But for the singularians, AI refers to that which will be both self-aware and superhuman in their intelligence, and capable of designing better computers and robots faster than humans can today. Such a shift, they say, would lead to a vast acceleration in technological improvements of all kinds. The idea is not just that the province of science fiction authors, a generation of computer hackers, engineers, and programmers, have come to believe deeply in the idea of exponential technological change, as explained by Gordon Moore, a co-founder of the chipmaker Intel. In 1965, Dr. Moore first described the repeated doubling of the number of transistors on silicon chips with each new technology generation, which led to an acceleration in the power of computing. Since then, Moore's law, which is not a law of physics, rather a description of the rate of industrial change, has come to personify an industry that lives on internet time, where the next big thing is always just around the corner. Several years ago, the artificial intelligence pioneer Raymond Kurzweil took the idea one step further in his 2005 book, The Singularity is Near, When Humans Transcend Biology. And of course, Ray Kurzweil, there's a great film out there called The Real Superhumans. You should Google that. Pick up a copy of that film, The Real Superhumans, and in which you'll see Ray Kurzweil talking on video phone with his doctor. And Kurzweil takes hundreds and hundreds of supplements a day, and he's already lived longer than any other Kurzweil and his family ever have, because they went in and they found the different genetic markers, and now he takes drugs against that, because Kurzweil is trying to extend his life long enough to reach the singularity, because he openly wants to merge with machines. And Kurzweil, of course, if you're familiar with music instruments and synthesizers, he's the inventor of the Kurzweil synthesizer. And he's worked extensively with Stevie Wonder back in the 1980s with those keyboards. I have a feeling one day they're going to roll out Stevie Wonder out of the Grammys with Kurzweil by his side, and they're going to say, look, folks, Stevie Wonder can see. Isn't transhumanism great? You laugh at that, but I'm serious. I wouldn't doubt that that's coming. He merged with machines. He sought to expand Moore's law to encompass more than just processing power and to simultaneously predict with great precision the arrival of post-human evolution, which he said would occur in 2045. And Dr. Kurzweil's telling, rapidly increasing computing power in concert with cyborg humans would then reach a point when human intelligence not only surpassed human intelligence, but took over the process of technological invention and unpredictable consequences. Profiled in the documentary Transcendent Man, which had its premiere last month at the Tribeca Film Festival. Oh, is that out? Oh, with his own Singularity movie due out this year. See, I knew that there was two transhumanist movies coming out this year. So Transcendent Man is one. And then, of course, there's another one coming out by Kurzweil about transhumanism. So that's definitely coming. But Dr. Kurzweil has become a one-man marketing machine for the concept of post-humanism. He is the co-founder of Singularity University, a school supported by Google that will open in June with a grand goal to assemble, educate, and inspire a cadre of leaders. Well, that's right. You know, it's going to be, reality won't quite be like fiction, folks. You know how it is in the Terminator when the machines come to destroy mankind? It'll be a little bit different than that. Well, it'll be a little bit different in the fact that, here, I'm going to tell you how. You know, the machines come and you got Skynet, and you've got the big things coming there to destroy mankind, right? Well, the only difference in reality when that happens is that the robots that come to wipe out humanity are going to have Google logos on the side of them. You know, brought to you, yeah. It'll have a, you know, Google. They'll have a Google brandishing and Yahoo badges on the side of them. Unbelievable. And a school supported by Google that will open in June with a grand goal to assemble, educate, and inspire a cadre of leaders who strive to understand and facilitate the development of exponentially advancing technologies and apply focus and guide these tools to address humanity's grand challenges. Not content with the development of superhuman machines, Dr. Kurzweil envisions uploading the idea that the contents of our brain and thought process can somehow be translated into a computing environment, making a form of immortality possible within this lifetime. So we're going to stop right there. And we'll finish this up. We'll talk more about transhumanism and this idea and the implications of this. I've talked about it many times in the past, but this article sort of got me talking about it again. So this is the Global Reality Tuesday edition. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Stay with us. Thanks so much for being with us today, folks, for the show. And lots more to get into. We're talking about transhumanism before the break here. And this whole move towards, you know, the final culmination of becoming, and this is these people plans. They want to become the truly living gods on earth. Now, if you go back and study the ancient Sumerian text, and you study, you know, what they say, I'm not asking that you put all your stock in that and they say that's 100% what you believe or I believe. What I'm saying is, as a frame of reference, you know, especially in how it pertains to the bloodlines. You know, when you look at how it talks about the ones that were made most in the image of the gods and were made with the most of the DNA of the quote-unquote gods that came down. The ones that were put in positions of kingship that were crossbred with the Caucasoids, that were the white-skinned people from the Caucasus Mountains that were put in positions of kingship in which all the interlocking bloodlines that exist today spawned from. The name that was given to these people that were put in positions of kingship were called the demigods. That's where the term demigod comes from. And or demagogue. You also hear that one as well. But the term demigod comes from that the term of the ones that were put in positions of kingship. Now, that's what these people are trying to get back to. You know, the whole idea of the divine right to rule. I mean, have you ever done any research into the divine right to rule and what that entails? Because the divine right to rule is all about the specific ruler basically being, chosen of God, the divine right of kings. Let me read this for you now. The divine right of kings is a political and religious doctrine of royal absolutism. It asserts that a monarch is subject to no earthly authority, deriving his right to rule directly from the will of God. Well, what God is it that we're talking about that they derive this power from? See, that's never made clear. See, because all they have to do is just tell the people that this ruler is having their deriving their right to rule from God, and that's okay. But see, when you see things like like King Louis the 15th, and he was portrayed as the son. There he is in the chat room there, and that's his representation of him appearing as the sun itself. And I guess that picture didn't show up, but nonetheless, you know, you start to see. I guess the picture didn't show up. My bad. Well, I guess it doesn't want to show up, huh? Whoops. But anyway, there's a picture of him as the son. As you know, so you know, that's the whole thing: is that whose God are we talking about that they have the right to rule from? I think it's pretty clear on what God they're talking about. The king is thus not subject to the will of his people, the aristocracy, or any other estate of the realm, including the church. The doctrine implies that any attempt to depose the king or to restrict his powers runs contrary to the will of God and may constitute heresy. The remoter origins of this theory are rooted in the medieval idea that God had bestowed earthly power to the king, just as God had given spiritual power and authority to the church, centering on the Pope. The immediate author of this theory was Jean Bodin, who based on the interpretation of Roman law. So again, we're back to the whole thing where all roads lead to Rome, as per usual, ladies and gentlemen. Back to that idea of where all of that came from. With the rise of the nation-states and the Protestant Reformation, the theory of the divine right justified the king's absolute authority in both political and spiritual matters. The theory came to the fore in England under the reign of King James I of England. And though he was Catholic, strongly promoted the theory as well. The theory of divine right was abandoned in England during the Glorious Revolution of 1688 to 89. The American and French Revolutions of the late 18th century further weakened the theory's appeal, and by the early 20th century had become virtually abandoned. Well, and of course it says the idea that the divine right to rule has appeared in many cultures, Eastern and Western, spanning all the way back to the first god king, Gilgamesh. Of course, Gilgamesh was the epic of Gilgamesh of the Sumerian civilization. Again, the divine right to rule. This being deemed, again, that goes back, as I mentioned earlier, goes back to the Sumerian thing where, though, you know, allegedly the white-skinned people that were made with the most DNA of the Anunnaki were the ones that were put in positions of kingship. These were the ones that had the divine right to rule. Now, here's my thing from studying this. What I see now with this move and this push towards transhumanism, and as we were talking about earlier, this push towards creating, you know, individuals that are cookie cutter people, weeding out certain mental aspects, weeding out certain personality types out of the system. You see, they're moving towards this thing where the divine right to rule of the future will be based upon there will be no challenge to the throne, because the people that are in charge will be merged with machines, folks. You understand? This is what they're moving towards. This is why Kissinger and the rest of these clowns are on these life extension drugs. Now, certainly there is a contingency to get off this planet, and certainly they don't want to go to other planets and set up colonies and mine resources and whatnot, but they do have a contingency plan for Earth as well, and I believe from the things that I've looked at, that is indeed what they want to do. They want to replace humans with a subspecies of humans and give themselves the divine right to rule indefinitely because of their immortal status as machine men. And this is another theme that has been you know, through history has been written about. Certainly in the realm of science fiction, hell, even music. You know, if you listen to the album 2112 by the band Rush, you know, have these great computers in these halls that run everything, and feeling and expression have been stamped out. You know, so I think that this is the scariest thing. They want to take away, you know, just there being, okay, everybody's on the even playing field. Human, you have some humans that are in control, some aren't, to where there can be no challenge to the throne because it will be clear that these people are at a higher level. So we'll talk more about transhumanism and the divine right of kings on the other side of the break. This is the Global Reality. Stay with us. Back here with you in the Global Reality on this Tuesday edition. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Thank you for being with us. And we're talking about this article. I'm going to continue reading out this article here from the New York Times in just a minute on the subject of transhumanism, and also on this idea of the divine right of kings. You know, almost in a way, I mean, I'm really torn on this issue for a variety of reasons, because just from what I know of the divine right of kings, divine right to rule, I mean, you know, really they don't even need the transhumanist issue to be able to do that. I mean, they already do that. You know, look at all your elected leaders around the world, who are allegedly elected leaders, the ones that are predestined and pre-chosen as your choice to give you the illusion of freedom, and they get the propaganda machines and the spin machines and the PR machines behind those specific candidates, and then they ensure that the vote goes for that specific person, and if it doesn't, then they just rig it that way. It's been going on for centuries, folks. Well, what they've ensured, so, you know, that's my whole thing, is that to a point they almost don't even need the transhumanism thing for the divine right to rule. They already have it. And that's why, as we were talking about in the last segment, you know, where really into the early 20th century, the divine right of kings had been abandoned. Well, that's because at that point, technology was starting to reach the point where they didn't have to have the divine right of kings anymore. They started setting up electoral governments. At the point in which they started having electoral governments, giving people the illusion of freedom, that they were, you know, having the freedom to choose their, has there ever been an electoral government ever for the people? I don't think so. It's always been a lie, hasn't it? Always. But yet, it's that illusion of freedom. It's that illusion of that you have a choice and a say in the matter of who your elected leader is, instead of it being anything but the case. So, that's what I look at. I think that, look at this, you know, Reagan, Bush, Clinton, blah, 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 all these people, Obama, you've got the same plan, the same people that are in there by design because of their bloodline and their families. And that's the whole thing about it. Yes, you're right. Eternal physical life. You're right. Illustrious dissent in the chat room. No, you're exactly right. They want the transhumanist merging because they want to extend the physical body. But see, they're well aware. They're well aware that in the non-material, or the etherical realms, the soul realms, the other dimensions, which transcend physical reality, they know they cannot control those realms. They cannot live as kings in those realms. So they want to extend their life in the physical realm where no one can overthrow them indefinitely. That is what they're trying to do. You're exactly right. They're trying to become gods of this reality. That's what it boils down to. And that's what the original idea of the monarchy and the divine right to rule. You know, and I've talked about this before. It's like, you know, we're not told in schools. They don't teach us in school that that all these people that are why, you know, they don't teach us. Well, why is the Queen of England? Why is she the queen? Why does she have the right to rule that? They don't teach you that. They don't teach you that it has to do with these bloodlines. You know, and what do they do? What are the evangelicals and they would use now as their reason for you to have to listen to the government, do what the government tells you? Romans 13, right? Well, Romans 13 directly relates to the divine right of kings, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, that's where it comes from. It's related to the ancient Catholic philosophies regarding monarchy, in which the monarch is God's vicegerent upon the earth and therefore subject to no inferior power. However, in Roman Catholic jurisprudence, the monarch is always subject to natural and divine law, which regarded as superior to the monarch. See, I mean, they can just rule by saying, well, it's divine law. That's the reason why it's this way. There's nothing you can do about it. It's divine law. The Old Testament, which a line of kings was created by God through the prophecy of Jacob in Israel, who created his son Judah to be king and retain the scepter until the coming of the Messiah alongside the priests, created his other son Levi. And that's where the Levite cult came from, which is exactly what the Mormon religion is. It's an extension of the Levite cult. And later a line of judges who were in effect kings, who was created along the line of high priests, created by Moses through Aaron. Later still the prophet Samuel reinstituted the line of kings and Saul under the inspiration of God. And see, this is where the priest class and the ruling ideas of the priest class come from. The divine right to rule. That their power comes from somewhere above man, and so therefore man can never interfere with it. And this is how they've been ruling forever and ever and ever. And now they're taking it to the new level now with transhumanism, where they want to become divine rulers of the physical plane. This has led to no shortage of raised eyebrows among hard-nosed technologists in the engineering culture here, some of whom describe the Kurzweilian romance with super machines as a new form of a religion. Yes. A new form of religion. Exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself. The science fiction author Ken MacLeod described the idea of the singularity as the rapture of the nerds. Kevin Kelly, an editor at Wired Magazine, notes, people who predict a very utopian future always predict that it's going to happen before they die. However, Mr. Kelly himself was not refrained from speculating on where communications and computing technology is heading. He has a work on his own book, The Technium, forecasting the emergence of a global brain. The idea that the planet's interconnected computers might someday act in a coordinated fashion and perhaps exhibit intelligence. He just isn't certain about how soon an intelligent global brain will arrive. Others who have observed the increasing power of computing technology are even less sanguine about the future outcome. The computer designer and venture capitalist William Joy, for example, wrote a pessimistic essay in Wired in 2000 that argued that humans are more likely to destroy themselves with their technology than create a utopia assisted by superintelligent machines. Right, it was the why the future doesn't need us. Bill Joy wrote that too, because Bill Joy was inside one of the, from Sun Microsystems, he's inside one of these shareholder meetings, and all the people within Sun Microsystems were all sitting around talking about the fact that humans are antiquated and that they don't need us anymore. And that, they've got machines now that can do better than what humans do. So, he freaked him out, as it should any human. It'd freak you out when people are sitting around going, we really don't need these lowly humans anymore. They're antiquated. They look at us as if we're some old, Apple II from the 1980s or late 70s or something. Oh, just throw out the antiquated computer. Just throw it in the junk pile over there. We've got the new, better upgrade model now, so we don't need them. So this is, this whole transhumanist idea comes from a place where they know that humans are becoming antiquated. They're trying to keep themselves from becoming antiquated. It says that Mr. Joy, co-founder of Sun Microsystems, still believes that, I wasn't saying we would be supplanted by something, he said. I think a catastrophe is more likely. Moreover, there's a hot debate here on whether such machines might be the machines of loving grace, of the Richard Bogdan poem, or something far darker of the Terminator ilk. So we'll continue that on the other side of the break. Transhumanism, the divine right to rule. This is the Global Reality. Stay with us. Back here with you on the Global Reality on this Tuesday edition. I'm your host, Josh Reeves. Thank you for being with us today for the broadcast. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, and we're glad you all could be here. There is a lot more here to talk about. We're going to get into a ton of news in the fourth hour today, but I do want to continue this article on transhumanism and the idea, because I've covered this extensively in the past here on the show and haven't talked about it in a long time, probably 7 or 8 months, or really even delved into talking about it, even longer than that. But I talked about it extensively last year, and that is, again, this, when I came into this, is I'd heard about transhumanism. Well, I remember hearing about Kurzweil and his ilk, 4 or 5 years ago, but never really looked into it. Never really saw that it related to the New World Order or anything, really. Just thought it was a bunch of kooky, crazy techno nerds that wanted to, live science fiction fantasy out in reality. I didn't think there was really something serious to it. back when I first started doing radio back in 2007, we were on TrueNet Radio. For those of you who don't know, the network Oracle Broadcasting was started out of the ashes of the old radio network TrueNet Radio that Mike Chambers used to run. Myself, Doug Owen, Michael Vale, Lee Rogers, and Rob Chowder were all on that network with Mike Chambers. And so back when we were on that network, Michael Vale was the guy that really got me looking more into this stuff. I'd heard of it, but doing the research on some of the stuff that he had found, and then looking into and then nexusing that with my research into the divine right of kings, the ancient societies, and the bloodlines. Then I started to see all these weird parallels when in between, that research and this research pertaining to, some of the deeper aspects of transhumanism that I had personally never looked into because I didn't see how they related. So see, that's one of the great things about, working with other people and getting other people's perspectives is because sometimes you don't realize that, while you're focusing on one area or one issue and doing a lot of research on that, you never know where somebody else's focus is going to come into play, and then you can bring things together and then draw things from all these different elements. And certainly a lot of my research into the ancient societies and stuff has facilitated a lot of the other hosts in their quest for knowledge, and by adding what I had found with what they already knew. So that's how it works. It's great to work with people like that and really help each other gain a better understanding for this, because I really think that's the whole point. Certainly, it's the point why I do the show and make films and whatnot, is so all of us together individually can gain and know more knowledge. Because let's just be honest, folks, there's just way too many shows out there that really have no interest in getting you to know more. They don't have any interest on educating themselves or you or anything else. This is not about that to a lot of people. This is about maintaining a fear climate in order to drain the last vestige of capitalism out of that, so they can retreat to their nice little fortified bunkers with their Jew gold and water filters and whatnot, while the rest of us stand up here and fight for a scrap of bread. But nonetheless, I do think this is a very interesting subject, and goes to this idea of them wanting to become living gods in the physical realm. So let's continue here. I see the debate over whether we should build these artificial intellects has become the dominant political question of the century, said Hugo Degaris, an Australian artificial intelligence researcher who has written a book, The Arctic War, that argues that the debate is likely to end in global war. Concerned about the same potential outcome, the AI researcher Eliza S. Yudowski, an employee of the Singularity Institute, has proposed the idea of friendly artificial intelligence, an engineering discipline that would seek to ensure the future machines would remain our servants or equals rather than our masters. Nevertheless, this generation of humans, at least, is perhaps unlikely to need to rush to the barricades. The artificial intelligence industry has advanced in fits and starts over the past half century since the term artificial intelligence was coined by the Stanford University computer scientist John McCarthy in 1956. In 1964, when Mr. McCarthy established the Stanford Artificial Intelligence Laboratory, the researchers informed their Pentagon backers that the construction of an artificially intelligent machine would take about a decade. 2 decades later, in 1984, the original optimism hit a rough patch, leading to the collapse of a crop of AI startup companies in Silicon Valley known at the time as the AI winter. Such reversals have led to the Silicon Valley technology forecaster Paul Saffo to proclaim, "Never mistake a clear view for a short distance." Indeed, despite this high technology heartland's deeply held consensus about exponential progress, the worst fate of all for the Valley's disgardy would be the generation before the generation that lives to see the singularity. Kurzweil will probably die along with the rest of us not too long before the great dawn, said Brodisky, the Silicon Valley roboticist. Life's not fair. Oh, life's not fair. Oh, Kurzweil will probably die before we reach here. I don't think Kurzweil's going to die before we reach here. The guy takes like 300, I'm not exaggerating, it's like 300 supplements in the morning. It's like 500 supplements in the afternoon, 500 individual pills. I don't know how his body is taking all this stuff in, like 300 at night, something like that. The guy does nothing but take all these life extension drugs and these. This guy doesn't care if he has to live to be 120 before he can do this. He wants to see this. Of course, Kurzweil is Jewish. I don't know if that means anything, but still, for you Jewish conspiracy theorists out there. But no, I mean, the whole problem with all of this is again, most of this stuff comes because, well, number one, well, it would be easy also to say, I think, that these people do this because they have no spirituality, or they do this because they're atheists. And they do this because they believe that when you die, your corpse rots in the ground and that's it, and that's all there is. But see, I disagree with that. I disagree with that summation wholeheartedly. I don't think that they do this because they're atheists and they don't believe in life after death or the other realms of reality. No. I postulate that they do know full well about these other realms, but as I stated earlier, they know they cannot rule over these other realms, and they will be put back in just basically another spirit, another energy. So here, they want to try to create through the technology the ways to do it. But see, I think that it's a Trojan horse. Kurzweil's openly talked about in several of his writings about how in the future they'll be able to create human bodies that will basically be exactly like a human body, but all the biochemical functions will be by machines. So how are you going to get that soul into a body like you do a human? Well, according to Kurzweil and some of these other transhumanists, the Transhumanist Society and others, what they believe is that once they're able to mimic and replicate through technology and basically a robotic child in the womb of a mother, they believe that they'll be able to have that soul energy enter the physical computer body in the way that it does in humans. And that to me sounds like a Trojan horse, ladies and gentlemen. Who do we know where they're getting this technology from? Who are they building this for? We don't know that there's a bunch of demons or entities in the spirit realm that want to come in these physical bodies and take over Earth. We just don't know. Sounds far-fetched, but when you think about everything else you know about these people at this point, is it really that far-fetched? So I think that all this stuff is a trap. And it's something we need to be made aware of, and to realize that science fiction is not just limited to the books and the movies anymore, folks. It's here, and here in a bigger way than we want to admit. This is the Global Reality, 4th hour around the corner. Stay with us. I think that the more and more I look at this, and we've had a lot of the transhumanist type of information and this merging with machine stuff has been spread around and put in the media as of late quite a bit. And the more and more I look at this, the more and more I come to the conclusion that I really think when you look at some of these movies that have come out, like Avatar, that's one aspect of it. Going into another body that's not yours and living vicariously through that. If the games like Second Life, that movie with Bruce Willis, what was the name of it? Well, the Replicants or something like that. I can't remember the name of it, but Surrogates. That's what it was, Surrogates. And you see how there's this push towards getting us to separate from our bodies while still having our consciousness merge with machines or interfacing with a computer. And I'm starting to get the sneaking suspicion that this merging with machines thing is how they're going to ultimately tell us we can save the planet, and tell us that this is how we can essentially cut down on carbon emissions, lack of resources, lack of all this stuff, because, then all they have to do is essentially, not very different from the Matrix. But I don't think they'd have to do it in a sinister way like the Matrix and the Sentinels and these evil robots. I think more of all they'd have to really do is get people to do it voluntarily and then make it something that everybody has to have. I mean, look what they've done with fashion. Look what they've done with cell phones. Look what they've done with portable devices, iPods, iPhones, all this stuff. They've made it to where people have to have it. They can't live without it. Facebook, all the rest of it. And I have a sneaking suspicion that the end result of this is they're going to say, all right, well, here's what we can do. We're going to take everybody in the world, and everybody in the world's bodies are going to be in these, these chambers, and your body functions and everything will run out through this and then to a tube and out of a tube, and you'll be fed intravenously, and your mind and your consciousness will be inside of this computerized digital world. And when we have everybody like that, the cost of, everybody existing in this other world and living out their lives in this other world, as opposed to being out there using up resources, doing this and another, and wars and wars and wars, that will how we'll save the planet. I think ultimately the merging of our consciousness and ourselves with machines will be how the environmentalists and these, global NGOs sell to the world how to save the planet. I mean, it sounds far-fetched, but the more and more that I look at the information, the more and more that I see this as a plausible scenario playing out. I mean, when you think about it, you go, well, you know what? It makes sense, and it would make sense they'd want to try to get everybody to push for that, because they're already doing it now. We're all living virtual lives right now, whether we want to admit it or not. You're listening to the sound of my voice right now in a house, in a computer, on a portable device. And I'm grateful for that, because it's able to connect a lot of us out there that probably would never have connected had this technology not existed. So I'm not always going to say it's bad, but the thing about it is that we're already submitting ourselves to these grids. We're already pulling ourselves more and more away from the real world and more into the world of virtual reality. And those kind of things, if you think about that, humans, just connected to these, intravenous feeding tubes, and their body function is connected to that, but their conscious and their mind existing in a computer-based algorithm where, you could make it whatever you want to make it. It would be just as real life. Almost kind of like what surrogates was, except in surrogates, they had them, they had these other fake bodies, and everybody went out and did that, and everybody was strapped into these things, But it's coming together to quite a head, this merging of machines, technology. I mean, this thing with this holographic pop star, I mean, in the future, there won't be live music. There won't be live concerts. Yeah, they'll probably still have some monkey, musicians up there playing the real music sometimes. The rest of it will probably just be digitized beats and samples, and much in the same way, a majority of the music is now. I hear stuff all the time. I listen to recordings. I tell people, that's not real drums there. Oh, yeah, it is. Listen, you can hear it. That's a real drum set. No, it's not. The digital sample that sounds like it. The sample rate has reached the point now where, they don't even, most of the time, they don't even put real drums on recordings, and where everything samples. He might have played it on a real drum set, which they had hooked, sensors hooked up to. And every time he hit it, it triggers a pre-recorded drum sound in a box. That's, that's pretty standard. You kind of have to ask not to do it that way. Just like nowadays you have to ask not to record everything in Pro Tools. That's why we don't do any of our stuff that way in the Demigods. All our stuff is recorded, 24 track analog, old school. No, you play it till you get it right. No cut and paste horse shit. But that's going by the wayside. And carbon-based entertainment's going by the wayside. I mean, it's, you don't have to deal with these things overdosing. You don't have to deal with these things having, personal issues or running out of creativity and the well running dry or getting old. You can have a virtual endless supply of pop stars that you can supply to the world, have live entertainment, and the people will clamor for it. And as much as I know that a lot of this end times prophecy stuff is horseshit and created by the priest class as a mechanism of fear and control, I will say this: just because we know that it is that doesn't mean they're not trying to fulfill it. You understand what I mean? I mean, we may know the origins of these phony religions and know that they're all from the same centralized control system, but let's not kid ourselves here. That's why they wrote these things. It's the self-fulfilling prophecy. They're creating the self-fulfilling prophecy. I mean, in the more and more that I see this, the more and more that I see what everybody's referred to as the great beast is not being a person or a, you know, an evil spirit or something else of that nature, but the technology. The technology, just like everything. We live in a world of dualism. This is a dualistic three-dimensional plane. Not every plane of reality is dualistic. Some are happening all at once. You have, you know, in ours it's dark, light, good, bad, black, white. We have this dualistic world. And so everything that we come across as major stepping stones, both microcosmically in our own personal lives and macrocosmically, largely as a species, these things always have to do with us figuring out how to balance the duality. Sacred knowledge, secret knowledge, what the occult secret societies know. This information is a double-edged sword. You know, when I first started researching this stuff, I bought into the fear and the propaganda by the Patriot movement, the Truth movement. I believed that things like Freemasonry and all these, you know, secret societies were all satanic devil worship cults, and that the elite were into it, and that's what it was. And that's not the case at all. And after years of studying the secret societies and actually getting their own books and their own documentation and their words and reading this stuff and going over and going, oh, you know, how come it is that I can't find anything anywhere that says anything about Satan or anything else? Now, they do reference Lucifer, but you have to understand Lucifer and Satan are not the same thing either. And Lucifer is not only just a negative entity. Lucifer is the duality. It's positive and negative. You know, this, you know, the saying in the Bible, I am the Alpha, I am the Omega. That's Lucifer. It's a duality that exists in one energy. That's why Lucifer is often depicted as a hermaphrodite. Positive, negative, male, female happening at once. It's whatever you're using the magical incantations and this secret knowledge and stuff for depends upon your intent. And if your intent is only to draw upon the negative aspects and to use negative energy and power against the world, then that is the power you will draw, but it is not the only one. There was also the duality, the other side of that, which is the polar opposite of this evil. And when you really study the secret societies and what their information is saying, you understand that nowhere in there does it say this is to be used for good or evil. Never once do any of their writings do they say anything. This is supposed to be used 100%, no question, for evil, for tyranny, and for the enslavement of mankind. But also nowhere does it say this is supposed to be used for the enlightenment and the freeing and the utopian world of mankind. It doesn't say that either. The information, the knowledge simply is. And its intent and how it is used depends upon whose hands it falls into. And unfortunately, this sacred knowledge, this secret knowledge has fallen into the hands of people who wish to use it for evil purposes. But that is not the only outcome that exists in space-time. We can change that. That's why we can learn what they learn. We all need to become better magicians. As soon as we all become better magicians and figure out how to use what they use for the purposes of good, for the purposes of freeing mankind instead of enslaving them, we're going to give these people the run for their money. And technology is that double-edged sword. It is that double-edged sword that can either free us and bring us to the most beautiful total expression of ourselves, or it can be used to enslave us and destroy us. But we are willfully allowing ourselves to go along with the willful destruction use of this technology and of this knowledge. And why are we willfully allowing ourselves to go along with it? Because we're addicted to it. And we do not want to have to think about what our lives would be without it. The inconvenience of it all, the inconvenience of having to grow and get your own food and not just be able to go through a drive-through window or a grocery store or somewhere and get it. The inconvenience of having to wait on a letter to go around the world before you can hear from someone instead of just picking up the phone and calling them or seeing them instantly online. We are keeping this in place and allowing this stuff to be used against us because we're so addicted to it. What do they call that? Munchausen syndrome or Stockholm syndrome or something like that? Yeah, Stockholm syndrome. You know what Stockholm syndrome is? Where there's I think there's a Nirvana has a song about it. It's called Polly. That's what that song's about. It's about, you know, when you somebody gets kidnapped, and then after being with that person for so long, they start to understand why the person is that way, and they actually start to agree and have empathy for their captors. That's where they've got us at. They've got us to the point where they've got us to, you know, associate ourselves with our captors. And, you know, people think George Bush is a great guy, and people line up to get his books and get his autograph. And, you know, we're just a regular guy like us. No. They've gotten us to feel like we have a rapport and we have something that we can associate ourselves with our captors, folks. That's how they've gotten us. Everybody wants that next person to blame because it's very, very uncomfortable to have to admit that the people to blame for this at this stage in the game are ourselves. Now, that's not fair to a certain extent because none of us ever asked for this and none of us had a chance from day one. We were born into this, so what chance do we have? And that's true, and I admit that. But to the point, now, people have known that this is going on for a long time. A lot longer than any of us want to believe. I mean, when did John Robinson write Proofs of a Conspiracy? 1785? Something like that? 1777, 1785, something in there. John Robinson's Proofs of a Conspiracy. The book was written in the 1700s, ladies and gentlemen, and he talks about how he was recruited into, you know, the secret societies and the Illuminati and all this stuff. And he laid out their plan 100% what they were going to do. So let's just say, at a minimum, people have been aware of what these people are doing, what's going on, and what the plan is, at least as early as the late 1700s. So we're talking, you know, 200, 300 years ago. So for at least 200-300 years, folks, somebody, somewhere, and some amount of people on this planet have known what these people are doing. But it got slicker and it got slicker as the years and years and decades rumbled on. But the plan never stopped. This plan has been initiated for thousands of years. And it exponentiates and grows and becomes more powerful and bigger and more ominous every single year. But we love it. I love it. You love it. We love it all. That's the problem. That's a problem. I mean, there's no easy way out of any of this. You understand. None of us are going to be comfortable with what the end result of any of this stuff is going to be. So what do we do? Well, number one, you stop worrying about it. Quit worrying about the things that are out of your control. Quit worrying about those things that are out of your hand. You could get hit by a dump truck tomorrow walking out to get your mail. You could get hit by a piano falling out of a building walking down the street. Lightning could strike you. You could have a massive coronary eating Cheerios in the morning. Life is short. Get a fucking helmet, man, because it don't last long. So we have to start understanding that there is a line, and we have to start to learn that we have to toe that line. Toe the line between wanting to be informed and wanting to know information, but at the same time, not constantly worrying what the next false flag or the next, Armageddon or big kill Megadeth scenario that's coming around the corner. You can't control it anyway. But what you can control is how much knowledge you allow yourself
to absorb and take in, and how much you are willing to do to then reciprocate that knowledge to more people. That's something you can do. You do have power over that. But people are so reluctant to even do that, and I just don't get it. Because people are so afraid and so worried about what people are going to think about them if they do talk about these subjects. You got to let that go. And you come to where you reach a certain age and you're supposed to not worry about what people think about you anymore, whoever they are, your parents or, your friends or your neighbors or your family or coworkers or whatever else. There comes a time in your life where you just have to say, this is me and I've got to be me and I've got to talk about this stuff no matter how weird it sounds to people because it's important. And if I don't talk about it, then at the end of the day, when I've shuffled off this mortal coil and I'm 6 feet underground, I'm going to be dead, not be able to do anything and not have done anything. Win, lose, or draw, no matter what the end result of, the New World Order's Grandmaster in-game scenario plan to destroy everybody, which is exactly what we're told it is all the time. It's important to be informed, but at the same time, you do not want to allow these people to win. And if you live in fear and you don't do what you want to do with your life in the limited time that you have, then it all didn't matter anyway, did it? We're going to take a break, come back, and get into more news tonight. We got a lot of news here for you on the show. This is The Global Reality right here on the Global Reality Radio Network with me, your host, Josh Reeves. Stay with us. We talked quite a bit last night about transhumanism, turning our reality over to a digital grid and essentially getting everyone to acquiesce to that in the name of, saving the planet and saving the planet from global warming and resource reduction, all the rest of that. And it's interesting that I talked about how a lot of these transhumanists like Ray Kurzweil, a lot of them are have put the singularity as occurring, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 years ahead in the future. But there have been some people who have speculated that with the way that technology has exponentiated over the past decade, I mean, it's unbelievable. The processing power of 5 years ago, the processing power we have today 5 years ago was still considered 20 years off. I mean, literally, processing power in 2005, what we have now in 2005 was considered 20 years off. So in 5 years, we already have processing power that 5 years ago was 20 years away. So what does that mean? Because a lot of people have speculated that the singularity could be here as soon as 2015. So it was interesting that I mentioned that last night and talked about that last night on the show. And then today, synchronistically, here's this article. And I wonder if there's a connection here. I'll let you decide. IBM expects to see holographic phone calls and air-powered batteries by 2015. There's that number again. Very interesting. By 2015, your mobile phone will project a 3D image of anyone who calls you, and your laptop will be powered by kinetic energy. At least that's what International Business Machine Corporation sees in its crystal ball. The predictions are part of an annual tradition for the Armonk, New York-based company, which surveys its 3,000 researchers to find 5 ideas expected to take root in the next 5 years. IBM, the world's largest provider of computer services, looks to Silicon Valley for input, gleaning many ideas from its Alamodon Research Center in San Jose, California. Holographic conversations projected from mobile phones lead this year's list. The predictions also include air-breathing batteries, computer programs that can tell when and where traffic jams will take place. See, most people that in this little list would kind of just mow over that. Think about that just by itself. Computer programs that can tell when and where traffic jams will take place. So they're able to predict. This is AI stuff. This is, Caesar level stuff we're talking about here, but even on a lower level, computer programs that can tell but when and where traffic jams are going to take place before they do. That's almost precog stuff. Environmental information generated by sensors in cars and phones and cities powered by the heat thrown off by computer servers. These are all stretch goals, and that's good, said Paul Saffo, managing director at Foresight in the Investment Advisory for Discern in San Francisco. It's an era when the pessimism is the new black. A little dose of technological optimism is not a bad thing. So again, this is, continuing on with this reliance and everything and all of the solutions for everything in our world being turned over to technology. And again, you just can't help but think this is a very, very dangerous road for mankind to be going down. It just really, it's pretty wild. I had a question from the email, globalrealityshow@gmail.com, where you can also email questions if you don't like to call in. What was the phrase from the different movies that you said last night? I talked about that last night. It was Gort, G-O-R-T, Klaatu, K-L-A-A-T-U, Barada, B-A-R-A-D-A, Nikto, N-I-K-T-O. I got into that last night. You can go back and listen to that. Go back and listen to last night's show if you want to know about what that means. I'm not going to get into it again. It's just some interesting things that I found and some different correlations between movies. It's on the wall in Alan's cubicle in the original Tron. It's the phrase that the lady says to the robot Gort in the original Day the Earth Stood Still to keep the alien from destroying Earth. Keanu Reeves says it in the 2008 remake of The Day the Earth Stood Still, and that's an interesting correlation because Tron was the first Matrix before there was a Matrix, and then you have Keanu Reeves, who was in the Matrix, saying that as well. It's also the name of the three aliens on Jabba's ship in Return of the Jedi. It's also the phrase that Ash says in Army of Darkness to destroy the Necronomicon. So I think it's some sort of Kabbalistic magical spell is what I think it is. But more research needs to be done. But again, you can listen to last night's show and hear me talk about that more and more. I'm not going to get into it again. Another question here from the email. Interesting that you brought up the year 2015 and Ray Kurzweil, because I was reading an interview with him last week, and one of the questions asked was how he sees the world in 2015. Wow. There it is again. I was just talking about last night that, because I had read, people were saying, the singularity is not going to come for 30, 40, 50, 80 years. And I started reading things where they were saying that the way the technology was progressing now could very well be here as soon as 2015. Because again, 5 years ago, we thought the processing power we have right now today was 20 years off. He says it ties it up with what you've been explaining. Anyway, here's the link to the question. Okay, life, and we'll just go and we'll read this. Ray Kurzweil is well known for making accurate future technology predictions. He has been successfully predicting the future by using extrapolations of the current state of technology since the beginning of the 90s. It's a long read, but well worth it. And it says, question number 11, how do you envision the world in 2015? This is a question to, of course, Ray Kurzweil, who coined the phrase, the singularity. What economic and technological predictions would you make for that year? Kurzweil says, by 2015, computers will be largely invisible and will be very small. We will be dealing with a mesh of computing and communications that will be embedded in the environment and in our clothing. That's the first step toward transhumanism right there, isn't it? People in 2005 face a dilemma because on the one hand, they want large, high-resolution displays. They can obtain these displays by buying expensive 72-inch flat-panel plasma monitors, but they also want portable devices which have limited display capabilities. By 2015, we will have images input directly onto our retinas. This allows for a very high-resolution display that encompasses the entire visual field of view, yet is physically tiny. These devices exist in 2005 and are used in high-performance applications such as putting a soldier or a surgeon into a virtual reality environment. So in 2015, if we want large, high-resolution computer images, it will just appear virtually in the air. We will have augmented reality, including pop-up displays explaining what is happening in the real world. We will be able to go into full immersion, visual, auditory, virtual reality environments. We will have usable language technologies. these are beginning to emerge, and by 2015, they will be quite effective. In this visual field of view, we will have virtual personalities with which you can interact. Computers will have virtual assistants with sufficient command of speech recognition that you can discuss subjects with them. Search engines won't wait to be asked. They will track your conversation and attempt to anticipate your needs to help with routine transactions. Well, hey, guess what, Ray? It's 2010, baby, and it's already here. We already got that. Google started doing that this year. You go to start typing, and before you can even type it in, it starts coming up with what possibilities of what you're looking for. Now, that's already here. So if that's 2005, he's saying that's going to be there in 2015. Again, as we've said, in 2005, the processing power that we have today in 2010 was 20 years off, folks. They've far surpassed, what's the whole, I forget the name of it, the whole theory of computing power. We've surpassed even that. These virtual assistants won't be at the human level. That won't happen until we have strong AI, but they will be useful, and many transactions will be mediated by these assistants. Computing will be very powerful and will be a mesh of computing. Individuals who need the power of 1 million computers for 25 milliseconds will be able to obtain that as needed. Cloud computing, that's already here too. Exactly what he's talking about right there. Individuals who need the power of 1 million computers for 25 milliseconds will be able to obtain that as needed. That's cloud computing. We already have that. So you see what I'm saying? I mean, what the things that he's talking about here are really the first steps toward transhumanism. This was 2005. Now in 2010, we already have many of these things here that are saying are coming in 2015. So what is it going to be like 5 years from now? It's going to be vastly different, folks. But Facebook and smartphones and all this stuff is already the first step towards acclimating this. And this is also why these total immersion games and World of Warcraft and all this other stuff, and also while they've been using these training simulators that simulate combat. And remember all those stories we talked about, how the recruiting offices set up those systems for that, and they got a lot of recruits in by basically putting them on the video game first that's realistic. This is what we're moving towards. I believe that we will be well on the way to overcoming major diseases such as cancer, heart disease, and diabetes through biotechnology revolution that we talked about above. We will make the progress in learning how to stop and even reverse the aging process. So thanks to Illuminated Scan for sending that over. Oh man, good stuff there. And it keeps on coming back and coming back and back and back and back and back to the to this. It continues to exponentiate again. Just 5 years ago, the processing power that we believed that was coming was 20 years off. We already have. It's the processors that I guess it was the Nehalem processors that Intel came out with last year were supposed to be the next generation chips, the stuff where they would start integrating holographic tech into, games and all this different stuff. And now the new processors, we talked about on Monday, the processors now where they can remotely lock the processors down. Those are the next generation Nehalems that are coming out now. It's going well beyond that. I know that, I think the octo-core systems are out. I know there's a 6-core system out now, even past the quad core. I got a quad core in 2008 and thought I was shitting in high cotton then. They've got 6-core, 8-core systems, I think. Now I think the octo cores are probably coming out pretty soon. Unbelievable. Again, if you'd like to join us here tonight on the broadcast, we'd love to hear from you. 214-613-5732. That's 214-613-5732. If you'd like to join me on the broadcast tonight, any topic of discussion, anything you'd like to get into, love to hear from you. 214-613-5732. That is the number to get you up and on the air with us tonight here for this live edition of the Global Reality right here on the Global Reality Radio Network. We've talked a lot on the show. We talked a bit about last week concerning, we talked about the Neutron movie, and we've talked about the Caesar supercomputer, and some of that stuff kind of tied in with the Tron movie. I thought there, or very well could, depending on how you were looking at it. And I've talked about how everything, the whole control grid and the whole information awareness and why they want all this data, I believe, is not the powers that be or the intelligentsia or the elite. It's more that this artificially intelligent supercomputer wants more and more data. It's interesting, in the first Tron, the Master Control Program, the MCP, when it's talking to the gentleman there that is the bad guy, Sark, in the computer, and he's talking to the computer, and he says something about, I wrote you, you're just a program, I wrote you, and the program says back to him, I've gotten 12,382,416 times smarter since then. And, and he's like, do you realize how many systems I've appropriated? How many outside computer systems I've gone into? I was going to hit the Pentagon next. And he says, what do you want with the Pentagon? He says, the same thing that I want with the Kremlin. I'm bored with corporations. It starts wanting more knowledge the more that it appropriates. And that's what it seems that everything from space-based computer satellite systems, keyhole satellites like Worldview 1 and others, everything, the internet, all the data mining stuff, it is based on this AI supercomputer wanting more and more information. Now listen to this interesting article here from Wired.com. Algorithms take control of Wall Street. This sounds like something straight out of Tron. Listen to this. Last spring, Dow Jones launched a new service called Lexicon, which sends real-time financial news to professional investors. This, in and of itself, is not surprising. The company behind the Wall Street Journal and Dow Jones Newswires made its name by publishing the kind of news that moves the stock market. But many of the professional investors subscribing to Lexicon aren't human. They're algorithms. The lines of code that govern an increasing amount of global trading activity, and they don't read news the way humans do. They don't need their information delivered to them in the form of a story or even in sentences. They just want data. The hard, actionable information that those words represent. And this is, again, why I think that in some of the imagery and some of the things, I've talked about this before, in terms of the Hollywood movies and stuff that come out sometimes. I think this is why, and certainly Tron could be said that way, there are certain things that come across as the message of these films sometimes, but they aren't a part of the dialogue. They're not a part of the script, you see. Almost as if they were to put some of these ideas on paper and be part of the script. Once they're fed into the massive supercomputer, that would set off red flags that somebody is alerting them. But when you are able to put imagery or things on the screen that a person can glean information from and understand what you're trying to say based on the imagery, see, that's not on paper. That's not written down on words. So an AI supercomputer is not going to be able to have the context to say, okay, right there, they're trying to warn us that, no matter how far we progress with technology, for example, it's still better to be human. And humanity is still more important than any technology. And if you say that with visual imagery, and you say that without putting it into a script and have a character say that, you see, then you would be able to slip that past one of these artificially intelligent sentient computers. And I believe that is happening. I believe there are little warnings that are being put into some of these movies now to keep it away from the peering eyes of the AI supercomputer. Now listen to this. Lexicon packages the news in a way that its robo clients can understand. It scans every Dow Jones story in real time, looking for textual clues that might indicate how investors should feel about a stock. It then sends that information in machine-readable form to its algorithmic subscribers, which can parse it further using the resulting data to inform their own investing decisions. Lexicon has helped automate the process of reading the news, drawing insight from it, and using that information to buy or sell stock. The machines aren't there just to crunch numbers anymore. They are now making the decisions. This is unbelievable. Let me drop this into the chat room for you, and I'll go back to reading it. That increasingly describes the entire financial system over the past decade. Algorithmic trading has overtaken the industry. From the single desk of a startup hedge fund in the gilded halls of Goldman Sachs, computer code is now responsible for most of the activity on Wall Street. By some estimates, computer-aided high-frequency trading now accounts for about 70% of total trade volume. increasingly, the market ups and downs are determined not by traders competing to see who has the best information or sharpest business mind, but by algorithms feverishly scanning for faint signals of potential profit. They have turned the entire stock market, or at least 70% of it by the admission of this article, over to computers, folks. And we wonder why we're having financial collapses. If you program a computer, what is it going to do? It's going to play out that program the exact way you played it out to be. So they are programming these computers now to incite and produce boom and bust economies by design through their algorithms. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm just a geek, but to me, this is just a huge admission. I mean, maybe stuff we've already known, but my goodness, I mean, this is rather mind-blowing. Algorithms have become so ingrained in our financial system that markets could not operate without them. And to me, that sort of was, the kind of the theme I got from Tron, which again, look, more and more we're relying on this technology. There's going to become a time where human beings are not going to know how to exist without the use of technology and the aid of technology, and that is not a good thing, folks. I'm no technophobe, don't get me wrong. I love computers and technology and all this stuff as much as the next guy. Believe me, I'm not a Luddite. I love it. Love it. Love technology. Love me some computers. I mean, I love all this stuff. I think it's fucking awesome. I've always been a geek. But, regardless of that, I still have not ever let the technology replace my humanity. And I think a lot of people are, and that's a problem. I mean, I think we can all agree. I mean, we all love using technology to our advantage and to enhance our lives the way we can. But if we give that up, our humanity, in exchange for technology, that is a dangerous road. We talked about that a lot last week in some of the transhumanist stuff we discussed here. At the most basic level, computers help prospective buyers and sellers of stocks find one another without the bother of screaming middlemen or their commissions. High-frequency traders, sometimes called flash traders, buy and sell thousands of shares every second, executing deals so quickly and on such a massive scale that they can win or lose a fortune if the price of a stock fluctuates even by a few cents. Other algorithms are slower but more sophisticated, analyzing earnings statements, stock performance, and news feeds to find attractive investments that others may have missed. The result is a system that is more efficient, excuse me, the result is a system that is more efficient, faster, and smarter than any human. So there it is. I mean, that's a pretty big admission, I would say. Man, oh man, oh man. It's everything is now being turned over to the grid. Everything is now being turned over to the system. Technology is supposed to be at our disposal. Technology is supposed to be, we are supposed to be the creators and owners of it. Technology is not supposed to own and enslave us. And I believe that that is where we are heading. And I also believe that there are many people out there in the upper echelons of power that know that and are afraid of it as well. And they are allowing it to leak out into Hollywood movies and society and everything else. Somebody's trying to warn us of this. And that very well could be, as I first postulated when we first started talking about the Caesar 3 supercomputer, I postulated the idea that it very well, it seems to me there's a lot of evidence supporting the fact that this computer system now controls so much that it's very possible that the elite and the people in the upper echelons of power very well could be enslaved by this thing right now as well. They may have created the ultimate Frankenstein monster. I mean, allegedly, the story is that they turned over the first operational functions of this machine during the 9/11 operation. That was the first operation that was run completely by a computer system, from the remote control planes to the detonators to everything, and was pulled off with the accuracy that op was pulled off because of it being run by this algorithm. Now, that would make a whole heck of a lot of sense when you look at some of this stuff that happens you know, when people think about, well, why would they poison this with these water wells and this hydraulic fracturing? I mean, don't they know that their kids have to drink that water too? Or why would they spray this stuff in the air? Their kids have to breathe that air too, blah, 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 blah. And that's when you have to start to understand that, okay, if things are being run to where the human factor is not even considered, then should we consider that who is really making these decisions is not human? And I'm not saying that they're extraterrestrial. I think some people jump to that conclusion. Well, I'm not saying they're reptiles either. Let's put away the fact that these guys are 8-foot blood-drinking reptoids for a minute. Let's put away the fact that these guys are demonic aliens from the fourth dimension. Let's just forget about all that for a minute. And what sounds more plausible? Not discounting those things. I think that they've created a monster. I think that that's what everything is now being garnered towards. And I really think that, especially after seeing the new Tron movie, I think that movie was a warning of that. I don't want to give too much of the movie away if you haven't seen it. So if you haven't seen it, you might want to turn down the volume for just a minute. But I'm not going to give away too much, so don't worry about it. But that's sort of in the movie, in the new Tron movie, that's sort of the thing. Kevin Flynn had created this program to create the perfect system. And because he was human, he didn't realize that perfection and quest for perfection would also lead to this program inadvertently creating genocide against something that was very revolutionary and was going to change the entire world of Earth as we knew it. But because that program was designed to create a perfect world, it saw these things that humans would identify as being a great breakthrough, as being, an anomaly and a detriment to the system, and had it destroyed. So that was the whole thing, is that this system that was created to create a perfect system started trying to basically take over the entire system of the computer, and then it sought to come out of the computer to take over the world, and then would have started destroying all the people on the surface of the world, seeing us as imperfect, because, as Kevin Flynn says in the movie, what's more imperfect than our world? So I think there was a definite warning there for us to, be very, very wary and careful about what we see as our savior very well could be our destructor. There's a lot of there's a lot of stuff on the Caesar and 9/11. You can Google all that. Let's continue here. I've got another story that sort of ties in with that. I was in the stores over the holiday weekend and stuff, and looking at different TVs, and I was just thinking, it's so strange. My parents bought a 42-inch plasma, like, I don't know, 2-3 years ago, and they paid like $1,200 for it. I'm sitting looking, 42-inch plasmas are $500 now. They were $1,200 3 years ago. They were $10,000 9 years ago. And people are saying, oh, well, why is the price of these TVs getting so low? What's the next thing that's coming out? Blah blah blah. And I keep telling everybody, well, the next thing that's coming out within the next 5 years is holographic. And now they're preying on these stupid idiots that are buying these 3D TVs that you have to wear glasses for, that cost $10,000 or whatever, or $5,000. These stupid idiots are actually going out and buying these 3D TVs. That technology is going to be antiquated in the next year or two. Everything is going to go holographic. Video games, that's part of Internet 2. The new backbones that Sun Microsystems has put in all the hubs for Internet 2, that actually can handle the kind of bandwidth for 3D holographic imaging and video and video gaming. It's all going 3D holographic. Avatar was the first sort of test and rollout of that type of technology, because Cameron has been in his Howard Hughes owned big movie set working on holographic displays for DARPA for the past 10 years. And no sooner than I was telling people about that over the weekend, this article comes out from the London Telegraph. Apple patent reveals plans for a holographic display. A recently granted patent reveals that Apple, the company behind the iPod and iPhone, has been working on a new type of display screen that will produce 3D dimensional and even holographic images without the need for glasses. Yeah, your iPhone, what's the iPhone 4 is out now? Okay. Well, the iPhone 8, or the iPhone 7 will probably have a little pop-up holographic display on it. Everything's moving towards that. I mean, even a cutting-edge flat-screen TV now in a couple of years will be antiquated. Everything's moving towards, and again, that whole merging and changing of our realities and merging technology with the existing reality and what's a hologram and what's real and what is it. And we've seen those dichotomies played out in science fiction movies for years, and we're now reaching that stage. I mean, we're entering into 2011 here, folks. My God. Remember just a decade ago when we were moving into 2001 and we felt like we were moving into, the Jetsons world? All right, man, over the next 10 years, we're moving into high tech. And what's really changed? Not much. The gadgets have gotten cooler. The special effects in the movies have gotten better. But that's really it. I mean, the gadgets and the trinkets and the baubles and the toys have gotten cooler, but not much else has really changed. And that's not going to be the same case in the decade we're coming towards and going into. We're in the final days of this decade. We're moving into a new decade now, folks. I mean, have any of us really wrapped our minds around this yet? We're on the dawn of a new decade. This is, I think you all should cherish these moments right now and cherish every moment of your days and your life and the way that your life is right now, because very soon as we get into 2011 and on into the coming years, we are going to start to see things that are going to occur and continue to happen. They're going to change everything about the way that we've experienced this world up to this point. And I believe in someday in the not too distant future, we're going to see these days of right now, as may not be the greatest times with all the financial stuff and, everybody's doesn't have the kind of life they used to have anymore. But I think even these times a few years from now will be cherished, and we'll look back and wish we could go back to 2010. I really do. I really see that coming down the road, a day when a lot of us, even think about prior to 9/11, think about before we had all this control and all this tracking and all this stuff. That's kind of the way it was. It's like, life was just day to day then. And, maybe it wasn't better than it was now, but when you look back on it, you can't help but feel that, yeah, life was better than it is now before 9/11 when you look at everything that's happened. And, I think that's the main thing that we have to keep in mind right now, as bad as this stuff gets and as it seems, is that it could always be worse. But it really how it all plays out is going to be our ability to be able to adapt to this new coming perspective and adapt to this new coming changes in our world, but to adapt while still not giving ourselves over to it. That's going to be one of the real big thing to me that's going to separate the men from the boys in this one is. And I think that it is possible to do that. I think that's what is really should be the point of shows like mine and movies like mine and stuff that we do as we're moving into this new decade. I think that the point of this should be to try and, at least relate ideas to people on how we can start adapting ourselves to these coming changes in our world without, selling our souls to them. I think that's where the real revolution is going to come. I think that's where the real change is going to come. It's going to come from our ability to be able to adapt with the changes that are going to be happening at a fast pace all around us, while at the same time not succumbing to them, not giving ourselves over to them. I see that as the biggest challenge for mankind in the coming decade. Will we succumb to fear and hate and lies, or will we step up to the plate and become men for the first time and see that the truth is bigger than our own egos. I've said it once, I'll say it again. It's all going to come down to us, folks. It always has. It always will. Here's the article that I mentioned earlier from the New York Times. More of these science and transhumanist type articles concerning computers coming out. Computers that see you and keep watch over you. Hundreds of correctional officers from prisons across America descended last spring on a shuttered penitentiary in West Virginia for annual training exercises. Some officers played the role of prisoners, acting like gang members and stirring up trouble, including a mock riot. The latest in prison gear got a workout, body armor, shields, riot helmets, smoke bombs, gas masks, and at this year's drill, computers that could see the action. Now, I don't know about you, but this really makes me feel that, okay, you know, they've done these kinds of drills for years. But what would be the advantage of doing it now where it could be computer controlled? Well, again, as we've talked about with these massive supercomputer AI systems like the Caesar system, which now they have the Caesar 3, totally AI, totally intelligent. It very well could be that that's what they're doing, is to see what computer algorithms they can come up with in the event of these type of things happening, riots and other things. Perched above the prison yard, 5 cameras track the play-acting prisoners, and artificial intelligence software analyze the images to recognize faces, gestures, and patterns of group behavior. When 2 groups of inmates moved toward each other, the experimental computer system sent an alert, a text message, to a corrections officer that warned of a potential incident and gave the location. The computers cannot do anything more than officers who constantly watch surveillance monitors under ideal conditions, but in practice, officers are often distracted. When shifts change, an observation that is worth passing along may be forgotten, but machines do not blink or forget. They are tireless assistants. The enthusiasm for such systems extends well beyond the nation's prisons. High-resolution, low-cost cameras are proliferating and found in products like smartphones and laptop computers. The cost of storing images is dropping, and new software algorithms for mixing, matching, and scrutinizing the flood of visual data are progressing swiftly. A computer vision can watch a hospital room to remind doctors and nurses to wash their hands or warn of restless patients who are in danger of falling out of bed. It can, through a computer-equipped mirror, read a man's face to detect his heart rate and other vital signs, and it can analyze a woman's expressions as she watches a movie trailer or shops online, and helps marketers tailor their offerings accordingly. Computer vision can also be used at shopping malls, schoolyards, subway platforms, office complexes, and stadiums, all of which could be helpful or alarming. Machines will definitely be able to observe us and understand us better, said Hartmut Nevin, a computer scientist and vision expert at Google. Where that leads is uncertain. Google has been both at the forefront of the technology development and a source of the anxiety surrounding it. Well, they should be. Google is fucking Skynet. Google is Echelon. Google is the NSA now. That's official. All the Echelon systems got turned over to Google once Google started becoming the main data gathering complex for the entire planet and for these artificially intelligent supercomputers that are now essentially running the entire game. Its Street View service, which lets internet users zoom in front of or above on a particular location, faced privacy complaints. Google will blur out people's homes at their request. Google has also introduced an application called Goggles, which allows people to take a picture with a smartphone and search the internet for matching images. The company's executives decided to exclude a facial recognition feature, which they feared might be used to find personal information on people who did not know that they were being photographed. Oh, geez, you think? Maybe just for a second? Oh, my goodness, I don't know. Despite such qualms, computer vision is moving into the mainstream. With this technological evolution, scientists predict people will be increasingly surrounded by machines that can not only see, but also reason about what they are seeing in their own limited way. The uses, noted Francis Scott, an expert in surveillance technologies at the National Institute of Justice, the Justice Department's research agency, could allow the authorities to spot a terrorist, identify a lost child, or locate an Alzheimer's patient who has wandered off. Yeah. Oh, we just want to use this so we can find us some old people wandering around. That's all. That's all we want it for. It's for old people and children. Yep. That's what for an outsider. Yep. Old people and children and outsider. That's what we want all this technology for. Yep, it sure is. We'll keep on moving along there. I mean, it's ridiculous. Let's see here. The future of law enforcement, national security, and military operations will most likely rely on observant machines. A few months ago, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, the Pentagon's research arm, awarded the first round of grants in a 5-year research program called the Mind's Eye. And we talked about earlier this rumor going around that DARPA, of all people, I mean, it's just so strange that DARPA is now given the Obama administration the green light to start disclosing extraterrestrials. We'll see. Its goal is to develop machines that can recognize, analyze, and communicate what they see, mounted on small robots or drones. These smart machines could replace human scouts. These things, in a sense, could be team members, said James Donlin, the program's manager. Millions of people now use products that show the progress that has been made in computer vision in the last 2 years. The major online photo sharing services, Picasa and Google, Windows Live Photo Gallery by Microsoft, Flickr by Yahoo, and iPhoto by Apple have all started using face recognition. Yeah, I bought a new laptop last year. I guess it was last Christmas. And I bought a new laptop, and the laptop that I got had, has a little camera built in and everything to it. And it actually came with facial recognition software where you can actually log yourself into the computer. You can actually make it where the only way you can log into the computer is by this facial recognition scan from the camera on the computer. But, I've never used it, never will. But, the real question is where does that go? Where does that technology go? You're on a broadband internet connection connecting to a computer, which, just like a couple of years ago, the stuff they started putting in the Dell computers. If you open up any Dell laptop or any Dell prefabbed PC, and you know what you're looking for on the motherboard, you will find a little chip on your motherboard that does not really have a purpose that you can determine. And there have been people that have actually called tech support to Dell and said, hey, what's this little extra chip here on my motherboard? What does this do? And they tell you, well, I can't tell you what that is and what it does on the grounds of national security. And what these little chips are keystroke loggers. They're built-in keystroke loggers, which actually log every stroke made on your keyboard and then send it to, a third party like the NSA or Google or whatever it may be. But that's how they've outsourced the ability to get all of our information on the internet. They set up Google as this big front company, which everybody believes is just, some company that was started and became a publicly traded company and, blah, 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 and there's nothing else to it. When in reality, this is how they've been able to gain all this information without doing it under the guise of a government entity. So it's highly interesting that they would talk about these, facial recognition stuff. Because, again, how do I know if I'm going to log into my laptop? How do I know where that facial scan is going? You would be a fool not to think that face scan would not go directly through your high-speed internet connection into some tracking grid somewhere through the NSA, Google, Echelon, or anywhere else. But again, this is part of the larger agenda, isn't it? They get us thinking this technology is cool and high tech. Wow, isn't it awesome to have a face scanned on your laptop so you can be like like you're out of some futuristic Arnold Schwarzenegger movie or some Philip K. Dick novel or something of that nature. Wow, look at this, man. You have to scan your face, facial recognition scan to get it in my laptop. Isn't that awesome? Man, it's new technology. Yeah, they get us to think it's cool so then they can enslave us with it. It's already happened. Connect, an add-on to Microsoft's Xbox 360 gaming console, is a striking advance for computer vision in the marketplace. It uses a digital camera and sensors to recognize people and gestures. It also understands voice commands. Players control the computer with waves of the hand and then move to make their on-screen animated stand-ins known as avatars run, jump, swing, and dance. Since Kinect was introduced in November, game reviewers have applauded and sales are surging. To Microsoft, Kinect is not just a game, but a step forward for the future of computing. It's a world where technology more fundamentally understands you so you don't have to understand it. Well, that's a hell of a statement, said Alex Kipman, an engineer on the team that designed Kinect. So what we want, feasibly, that's unbelievable. We want technology to understand us so we don't have to understand it. I'm blown away by that statement. But does anybody else but me think that's a huge admission and a huge statement for what the mindset is going into this new technology? Okay, so you need to know less and less and less about the technology that you're dealing with. So in turn, the technology you're dealing with can know more and more and more about you. It seems like a very dangerous and a very slippery slope towards total control to where, we're already giving all of ourselves over and all of our consciousness over to society and culture and to government and everything else. We're already acquiescing to giving up our minds and not having to think for ourselves. And, why would you have to think for yourself when you have a TV and you have culture and you have Edward Bernays and, the Madison Avenue programming and all that? We will determine for you what is hip and cool and what you should wear and be into and the fads and trends, and then you will follow those. They've been doing that for 100 years. But, now this is like what I would term a technological Bernays. I mean, this is like Edward Bernays 2.0 here. Where, again, as this guy who developed this Kinect gaming thing for the Xbox 360, it's a world where technology more fundamentally understands you, so you don't have to understand it. Yeah, you don't need to understand this technology or what it is or what it's doing, or you don't need to understand this neural interface that you hook to your brain, which enables you to control your avatar on this on-screen game. You don't need to understand what that does, and you don't really need to know what it's doing, because it's understanding you. And see, it's on your head, and it knows your neural pathways. It knows how your brain works and the levels it's operating on. So with that, you don't need to know more about the computing system. Well, I say hogwash to that. If we're gonna give ourselves in any way, small or large, to technology, it is in our ultimate best interest to know everything we can about understanding this technology before we choose to use it and enact it into our everyday lives. Otherwise, who knows what kind of Trojan horse we're opening up? I mean, just to say that the technology needs to understand you more so you can understand it less is a completely ridiculous ideology. And obviously, it's something that is being touted by people because this new Kinect add-on was the big holiday gift this year. This is unfucking believable. And everybody else is just walking around out there right now ignoring this, going home, I'm going to go to my non-stop job and I'm going to come home and play with my Kinect. Mm-hmm. And these guys are sitting here making jokes in your face about how, just the technology needs to understand you more so you can understand it less. We got this. Trust us. Just let the technology take over, and then you don't have to worry about whether or not you understand it or not. You don't have to be one of those stupid nerds and geeks that actually wants to understand this technology. That's more game time for you, more time to play World of Warcraft, more time to play whatever the new next World of Warcraft AI headgear control game system, plug into the neural net, into your brain to go online and, fuck around with orcs and wizards and all that horse shit, whatever it is. No, you don't need to understand the technology. You need to plug yourself into this shit and become one with it, and fuck worrying about it. Fuck worrying about how it works. Fuck that. That's for geeks and nerds. Only the cool kids have the brain neural net interface that walk around inside the computer. You don't want to be one of those uncool kids that doesn't have the neural net interface for the new computer World of Warcraft orcs and fuckerheads fucking game system, do you? No, you don't. You want to be cool. So plug into this fucking computer, slave, and shut the fuck up. That's what you're going to do. Here's a Hot Pocket. Love it. Take it.